Right now, somewhere in your memory there's a kiss you can still feel. Maybe it was this morning, quick, on your way out the door. Maybe it was years ago and it still shows up uninvited. You do this thing, pressing your mouth against someone else's, and you never once stop to ask why that, of all things, means love. Here's the reframe. Kissing isn't some cute custom we picked up along the way. It might be one of the oldest intimate behaviors humans do. Older than marriage. Older than most of the words we use to describe love. Some researchers think the roots go back before we were even fully human. The question is, how did pressing lips together become the universal shorthand for, "I trust you completely"? Let's go back to the beginning, and the beginning is stranger than you'd expect. Long before anyone called it a kiss, mothers were feeding infants mouth to mouth. Not out of affection first. Out of necessity. Chewing food down into something soft enough for a baby to swallow, then passing it forward, lips to lips. Primatologists have watched chimpanzees do this exact thing. Mouth-to-mouth transfer, right there in the wild, no romance involved at all. Think about that. The gesture we now save for our most private moments might have started as a feeding strategy. But here's the thing. A behavior tied to trust, to closeness, to literally putting something vulnerable in someone else's mouth, doesn't just disappear once it stops being useful for food. It sticks around. It gets repurposed. By the time you get to early hominins, something else is layering on top of that old feeding instinct. Smell. For most of human history, faces did more work than we give them credit for. Getting close enough to someone's mouth and nose meant getting close enough to read them, chemically. Pheromone research suggests that noses, sitting right next to mouths, were picking up signals about health, fertility, even genetic compatibility. A kiss put your face directly into someone else's chemical signature. That's not romance. That's a background check run through your nose. There's a specific piece of biology that makes this even stranger. Genes known as the MHC complex, the ones that shape your immune system, seem to influence how someone's scent registers to you. Studies on attraction have found people often prefer the smell of partners whose MHC genes differ from their own, which, evolutionarily, makes sense. A partner with a different immune profile means offspring with a broader, stronger immune defense. You're not swooning over cologne. You're reading a genetic compatibility report and you don't even know you're doing it. Here's what makes this so important. If kissing really did start partly as a way to size someone up biologically, it means one of our most emotional behaviors was, underneath, doing something coldly practical. Choosing a mate who wouldn't make you sick. Choosing a mate whose immune system complemented your own. The tenderness came later. The function came first. Fast forward, and now we've got actual evidence, not just theory. Anthropologist Von Bryant spent years hunting for the earliest written proof of romantic kissing. For a long time, the assumed birthplace was ancient Greece or Rome. Bryant's research pushed that timeline back hard. He traced references to South Asia, to Sanskrit texts from around 1500 BCE, describing people pressing their mouths together and, in his interpretation, inhaling each other's soul. Not a modern poet's line. A Bronze Age one. Then in 2022, researchers pulled the record back even further, all the way to a cuneiform tablet from Mesopotamia dated to roughly 2500 BCE. Married couples described kissing in clay 4,500 years old. That's a kiss older than the pyramids at Giza had finished settling. But here's the problem historians ran into. If kissing shows up independently in Mesopotamia and South Asia around the same era, does that mean it was invented twice? Or does it mean it's older than any single civilization, something humans were already doing long before anyone thought to write it down? Most researchers now lean toward the second option. Writing didn't invent the kiss. Writing just finally caught up to it. And this is where the story gets a genuinely unexpected twist, because kissing isn't universal in the way you'd assume. A 2015 study led by anthropologist William Jankowiak looked at 168 cultures around the world and found that only about 46% practiced romantic sexual kissing at all. Less than half. Entire societies in parts of Africa, Asia, and South America expressed intense romantic affection without ever putting it there. Sit with that for a second. Something you'd swear is hardwired into being human isn't universal. It's cultural. It spread. It got adopted, refined, exported the way food or music travels. In some of the societies Jankowiak studied, closeness got expressed through other rituals entirely. Mutual grooming. Forehead touching. Nose pressing, still common today across parts of the Pacific and among some indigenous Arctic communities, sometimes called a kunik, where noses and upper lips brush together to share breath instead of saliva. Same underlying goal, intimacy, trust, bonding, delivered through a completely different physical script. So if it's not purely instinct, why does it feel so instinctive to the people who grew up with it? Here's the neuroscience answer, and it's a good one. Your lips are packed with an enormous concentration of sensory nerve endings, way out of proportion to their size. When you kiss someone, your brain gets flooded, dopamine for pleasure, oxytocin for bonding, a drop in cortisol that actually lowers your stress in real time. Your body isn't performing a symbol. It's running actual bonding chemistry that evolution clearly favors, even if the specific gesture triggering it is learned. That's a bonding machine hiding inside a cultural habit. Which explains something else. Kissing shows up as a test over and over across history. Ancient Roman writers described entire categories of kisses, one for family, one for friends, one reserved only for lovers, with real social consequences if you got the category wrong. In medieval Europe, a kiss could seal a legal contract. Feudal vassals kissed the hand of a lord to confirm loyalty. That's not affection. That's a signature. Same impulse, wildly different stakes. Try explaining that one to HR. Even the law got involved. In parts of medieval England, a kiss of peace was exchanged during church services, passed hand to hand or cheek to cheek down the pews, a physical ritual meant to prove there was no lingering grudge between neighbors before they took communion together. Skip it and people noticed. Refusing the gesture could read as a public accusation. By the time you reach the 20th century, cinema takes this ancient, quiet, biologically loaded gesture and blows it up into spectacle. The first on-screen kiss, filmed in 1896, scandalized audiences who found it borderline obscene to watch strangers do publicly what used to be intensely private. Newspapers actually called for it to be banned. And now it's the default ending of practically every romantic movie ever made. The most private gesture in human history became the most public shorthand for, and they lived happily ever after. Advertisers noticed too. By the mid-1900s, the kiss had become a marketing shortcut all on its own, stamped across perfume ads, movie posters, greeting cards, an instantly readable symbol that needed zero explanation in any language. A gesture that once quietly transferred chewed food between a mother and her child was now selling lipstick. So here's the full picture. It starts as a mother feeding her child, mouth to mouth, out of pure necessity. It becomes a way to smell out a good mate, evolution quietly running its own version of a background check. It gets written down in Mesopotamia and South Asia, thousands of years before anyone called it romantic. It spreads unevenly across the globe, adopted by some cultures and never touched by others. And it ends up rewiring your brain chemistry every single time you do it, whether or not you know any of this history. That kiss you were thinking about at the start? It's connected to feeding rituals, immune system detective work, Bronze Age poetry, feudal law, and a scandalized 1896 film audience, all compressed into 2 seconds of pressing your mouth against someone else's. Here's what makes it important. Somewhere between necessity and instinct, humans built one of the most efficient trust signals ever invented, and then dressed it up as romance so we'd never have to think about the biology running underneath. If you've ever wondered why something so simple can feel like the entire world, now you know it's not simple at all. It's tens of thousands of years of survival, chemistry, and culture, compressed into a single gesture you'll probably repeat again today without thinking twice. If this rewired the way you look at something you do without thinking, you know what to do with that.